to do a multiple in terms of deal size. And then after we were able to do a multiple of deal sizes, the bigger deals became more consuming. And so we looked to fill them in with something that would then become a bit easier for us. So going back to one of the smaller scale projects to mix it up. But the key is also growing talent, to get good talent. And most importantly, I mean, when you get good talent, it's finding the people who are like-minded, that are going to give you a longer term commitment, and that you can train and mold into, being, a good part of your team. Because that's the other thing, again, with more familiarity, execution becomes easier because you all are all working together, and then you can kind of spread your bandwidth.
Got it. Makes sense. Thank you.
And I'm going to let Brother Charles Wheeler talk. He had a question. Charles, are you?
Yeah, Laurel, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Excellent. Mr. Peebles, Mr. Rogers, thank you for joining us. My name is Dr. Charles Wheeler. I'm part of the 100 Black Men of America. I also serve on the board for the Prince George's County chapter. So thank you for joining this forum. Everett Browning, who is our VPO of the organization, will be joining you shortly. Wanted to ask you this question. In the current climate, we were talking earlier about some of the work that Maxine is doing and the finance committees to get not just presence on the board, but to hold these financial institutions accountable. What do you see as if you were going to map out a threefold approach, what do you see as the top three means or methods that we need to employ to bridge that gap, to address that dilemma of having us not only having access to capital, but literally serving on the boards to disperse the funds?
I think, John, that's definitely in your space.
Well, the thing that I actually come at that a little slightly differently, we started a conference 18 years ago for African Americans on corporate boards of Fortune 500 companies. Started out with 35 directors, and last year we had over 200 directors come to the conference. And we've had all kinds of great CEOs, everybody from, Ken Chenault to Ursula Burns. We've had white CEOs, Jeff Immelt to Jamie Dimon, David Rubenstein, celebrities from Magic Johnson to George Lucas. But the key thing that we focus on the most is every year we have the conscience of the conference. Someone often who actually marched with Dr. King, like Andy Young, Reverend Jackson, Harry Belafonte, other people who believed in those kind of values. We had late Congressman John Lewis, of course, came, Congressman Clyburn, Barack Obama, Valerie Jarrett, Eric Holder, Mark Morial, et cetera. And the whole idea there is for those types of leaders to remind all of us that are in corporate boardrooms that we have a responsibility to fight for civil rights and economic justice once we're in the boardroom. We can't quietly sit in the boardroom and let all the economic opportunities go to white men. And that's typically what happens. And so the conference was co-founded by Charles Tribbett at Russell Reynolds. Deloitte's our partner also now. And we really hope that we can get our community to realize if we don't speak up, we're not going to be able to transform the economic opportunities for all of us that we all deserve. And what I've been talking a lot about lately, and talked to Reverend Jackson and Reverend Sharpton about this, is we just don't only need to have more Black people in the boardroom, but we have to have the right kind of Black people who are going to be like John Lewis and make good trouble. And people who, when they see something that's not right, that's something that's unjust, they understand there's a moral responsibility to speak up and fight for all of us. So I think sometimes we are so eager to say we need diversity on the board, but not understanding we need the right kind of diversity. The people who have that courage to speak up and fight for us. So I start with that to say that's really, really important when it comes to board service. At the same time, we're pushing to get more people on the board at the same time. At Ariel Investments, over the years, we've been responsible for getting 50 companies to have their first diverse board member by pushing them and challenging them as one of their major shareholders to say that we can't invest in your company if you don't have diverse boards. We want to invest in 21st century companies, not companies that look like 1940s companies. So that's kind of our key our key theme is we're going to be fighting for more of us in the boardroom, but we need to have the right people in the boardroom.
Absolutely. Appreciate that.
We have another gentleman, Jason Roberts, are going to allow to talk. Jason Roberts, are you on right now, sir?
I believe so. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can all hear you.
Okay. Thank you, brothers, for being a part of this discussion today. I work at the Federal Reserve Bank in New York, and I'm also the president of the Black Financial Regulators Association. And I've been fortunate enough to work on and even lead some of the New York Fed's recent work on racial equity. And so my question to both of you is, what role do you think the Federal Reserve can and should play in helping to ensure an equitable economic recovery, as well as a more equitable economy more generally?
Don, you want to go first? Or?
Go ahead, John.
Well, you know what I think, it's interesting is you probably know of the work that Ray Bashar and his team has done in St. Louis around economic justice issues. And I might not have the dates right. I think it's between 1992 and 2016. You have college-educated Blacks saw their wealth decline 10%, while college-educated whites saw their wealth increase 96% over that roughly 25-year period. I think one of the key reasons that's so critical, when we had Ray come and speak to our Black Directors Conference, most people had no idea how much further behind we are than we were 30 years ago and 40 years ago. So I think the Federal Reserve has a job to do, is to make sure that decision makers and leaders throughout the country understand that this wealth gap is not only horrible, but it's getting worse and worse each and every year, and it's gotten demonstrably worse over the last 40 years. The second thing the Federal Reserve can do is they regulate these banks, as you know better than I do. I used to be on the board of Bank One, and if there was a way for them to get banks to not only through CRA give micro loans to the local dry cleaner and restaurant, that's important, and that's really, those businesses are important. But again, get these banks that are spending literally billions of dollars on legal fees, accounting fees, consulting fees, advertising fees, money management fees for their 401k and their pensions and their wealth management platforms, technology services, to get these banks to spend money with Black people. And I hope the Federal Reserve has that bandwidth and has that ability to push the banks to do the right thing. Some are starting to do the right thing anyway, because of Joyce Beatty's leadership and because of Maxine Waters' leadership. But with the Fed behind it, they could get so much more done for all of us by getting all those dollars circulating in our community, not just going to the white community.
Yeah, just to follow up on that, I think that one of the things the Fed has done is they've done these recent studies on wealth and income disparities. And for example, one of the Fed regions did a study about the disparity between Blacks and whites in Boston. So the average household net worth of a Black household in Boston is $8. And the average household net worth of a white household is $247,000. So there's an extreme disparity there. And the Fed is aware of it. So one of the things it can do is publicize these absurd disparities. And then the other elements, for example, is the Black household net worth disparity is greater today than it was in 1968. Home ownership rates are for Black households are lower today than they were in 1968. And the income disparity between Blacks and whites has grown and is higher today since 1968. So we know these statistics. And so a big part of it is access to capital. And so I mean access to capital on a consumer basis. The number one place where the vast majority of American households create their net worth is through home ownership and equity and market appreciation of their homes. In order to buy a home, there is you need a loan. And many Black households are not able to qualify under some of the stricter requirements the banks impose. And so the Fed could send an initiative or come up with a plan of how to incentivize banks to be more flexible And the other thing is to leverage up higher, because many households, especially Black households, can afford to make mortgage payments, but they have difficulty saving for a down payment of 20%. And so some form of a greater leverage would be also another area that could be helpful. But that's where wealth has grown, is in home ownership. And then, of course, loans and investments in under reasonable terms and conditions for Black businesses and Black entrepreneurs.
Thank you both.
We have another, yes. Doyle?
There we go.
Hey, Doyle, how you doing?
Good, good. How is everybody? Sorry I'm a little late. Had to jumpstart the computer again.
Definitely. No, Doyle Mitchell, appreciate you being able to join us for this pre-panel Q&A discussion. I know you know Don well. I'm assuming you probably have a relationship with John as well, but I appreciate all
Titans of industry over there.
We're the little guys, you know.
I mean, Doyle, I mean, just what I just finished talking about, Doyle and his family have been doing in the District of Columbia since the turn of the century, 100 and some years ago. How long has industrial been in business?
Since 1934.
So 1934, it's almost 100 years. And providing capital to Black businesses and providing loans to Black consumers. So I'm happy, as always, to be in your presence. Your family's done just remarkable things for the city of Washington.
Well, you know, I admire you and John for what you all have done as well. But thank you for those words. You've always spoke kindly of the bank and my family, and I appreciate that. And the check is in the mail.
Well, you were my first bank. My grandfather started off my first savings account in your bank. And I used to go into the branch, I think it was on 11th Street and Florida Avenue, or 11th and U. Was it 11th and, am I right?
11th and U.
Okay. And then Georgia Avenue right up by Arkansas. So anyway, I mean, that was my first experience in banking, and I did it at a Black bank. I mean, I was fortunate to be able to do that.
You know, many people's grandparents did the same thing, and I owe the bank to them because they really built it. They really built it. That generation was phenomenal.
Yeah, well, my father did that for me. He took me to First Federal Savings and Loan for my savings account and Independence Bank for my checking account. So,
Okay, all right. Are you from here?
I'm from Chicago.
Oh, okay, okay. Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Independence Bank in Chicago, right? Okay.
Yeah, one time they were the largest in the country, I think.
They were at one time. Chicago had like 5 Black-owned banks, I think, at one time.
Yeah,
Maybe
Seaway.
back in the 70s.
Yeah, Seaway was big. You know, the question I have is, back when we were riding high with Black banks, we had progressive mayors like, you know, Coleman Young in Detroit, Marion Barry in Europetown.
Mm-hmm.
Harold Washington came here, and Maynard Jackson in Atlanta. They fought for Black businesses and pushed everyone to believe it was important to have strong Black businesses where we could employ each other, create our own philanthropy, be role models.
Absolutely.
Why have we lost that in this generation of political leadership?
It's a good question. You know, I think, you know, through the generations and some of our successes, I think, you know, some people just think that, you know, Black businesses aren't necessarily important. I can go to any bank I choose. And I think we've missed the point that, you know, when you look at our wealth compared to others, we're losing the race. We're losing the race.
You would think that progressive mayors, it was interesting. I was on a call with Keisha, the mayor of Atlanta. Melody Hobson interviewed her and started talking about what she was doing, you know, to create opportunities for Black businesses. And she started talking about how she had, in the last couple of years, had read Maynard Jackson's biography, and how Maynard made a big point in the biography about how when he first became mayor, none of the banks in Atlanta had Black board members. So he called them all in and said, if you all don't have any black people on the board, you're not going to be able to do business here in Atlanta.
Yeah.
And it was interesting. She told that story, which was great and inspiring, but she didn't tell us kind of how she was paying it forward in a similar way.
Sure. Sure.
You know?
I think, John, I think what happened in part is gentrification. You got to think about how our black mayors became in existence. It was white flight after the 1960s. So when post-segregation, whites left and went to the suburbs. And so the businesses and corporate offices and so forth stayed in the city, but the residents left. So the constituency that elected these mayors was predominantly black. DC, when I was growing up when I was a teenager in the 1970s, DC was 70+% black. I mean, I think it was 77% black. So that's who Marion Barry and Walter Washington before him answered to. And so they were responding to their constituents. Once they rebuilt these cities and the country in many places got more comfortable with integration, whites didn't like, and the suburbs grew, whites didn't want to drive that far anymore. So they came back to the city. So DC today is barely, is barely majority black anymore. And so the constituents—
I think it's a tad under 50%.
Right, so think about that. So the constituencies are different now. I mean, when I was growing up in high school, DC had 2 white city council members, Dave Clark, who represented Mount Pleasant and so forth, who was in SNCC, one of the early founders with Ivanhoe Donaldson and others in Marion in SNCC. And then you had a woman named Polly Shackleton who represented Ward 3, which was a white ward of the city. And that was it. Today, it's a majority white city council. So, I mean, so the cities have changed. And so what has to happen is people see civil rights in their rearview mirror today. And therefore, they don't see, they're trying to meet the needs of political leaders, they're trying to meet the needs of a broad constituency. But in doing that, they are omitting the needs of the black community, because these cities, the income and wealth disparities have grown dramatically since the Marion Barrys and the Harold Washingtons and others have left. DC's wealth disparity between blacks and whites is higher than it's ever been. And that's DC. And that's because you have black people carrying a disproportionate burden of poverty. And so in the end of the day, it's up to I think the black business community, we need to do more. We need to explain to the residents and the constituents why it's important that we exist. And we need to start setting the politics of how our cities are run. I mean, it wasn't by accident that in 1994, under Bill Clinton, that the SEC passed this regulation precluding people like you, John, from making political contributions to municipal elected officials, because if you did, you were barred for 2 years of doing business with them. And that was, again, by the design, I believe, to slow down the expansion of inclusion that these black mayors were doing, like Barry, who made sure that underwriters for municipal bonds, bond counsel, and so forth were all, black businesces.
Yeah, well, we don't do that business. As you know, we're, money manager in a mutual fund family.
Right.
But about, I don't know, it was 10 years ago or so, the SEC decided to pull us under the same regulation that the municipal bond people had, as you suggested, during the Clinton administration. And to pick out our 2 industries and say that we can't participate in our democracy fully, it's extraordinarily debilitating and heartbreaking. Because I was brought up by 2 parents who were very politically active, both ran for office. They said we had a responsibility to be included in our democracy, get engaged, get involved, fight for our people. And now they won't let us do that. The SEC won't let us do it.
Right, because now we have wealth, and it's hard to deploy it to level the playing field. So that's another part of this process. But I think we as black business people need to explain to the public, the average person, why it's important for us to exist. and what we do and what we can do. And I think that is something that we can do more of. I'm trying to do that in the places that we do business. And I think that is one of the things that, I know you do, John, and I know Doyle and the Mitchell family have been doing this for a long time, but I think more of us have to, and the people who are listening now and watching now, I mean, they've got to show why it's important, because then it's the banks, and then the elected officials like the controllers, the treasurers, who make decisions on allocating capital. It's not just government contracts, it's access to capital, and how right now there's almost $70 trillion in private equity and venture capital. Out of that $70 trillion, less than 1.3% of it is managed by firms run or owned by women or people of color combined. I mean, there's no way to catch up with that kind of disparity. And the irony is that the biggest investors in private equity are public employee and union pension funds.
Right.
I heard an interesting twist on the wealth gap very recently, which I think is the message for Blacks and for whites in this country. And they quantified the drag on the economy as a result of Blacks having so little wealth and being so far behind others in this country. And the drag on the economy is just an astounding amount of money. I don't recall what it is or what it was when it was stated, but for Black businesses to do better and Black wealth to grow only helps the entire American economy.
Absolutely.
We have a question from Justin McKinney, and I think I fixed this video issue, so I'm going to promote him, panelists, really quick. Justin, are you present? Hello?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes. Okay. Your video, I guess, do you have video right now or no? I felt like I resolved that. Okay. So definitely present your question.
Hey, how's it going, gentlemen?
Great.
Great. So my question really revolves more so around real estate development. I'm currently a real estate analyst working for Hope Community Capital, and we're working on some new market tax credit projects out of specifically Madison, Wisconsin right now, and some in Milwaukee. But my question was, I'm looking to really get into development, and there's a whole piece around really being able to shift the narrative on racial equality and creating a lot of funding opportunities. And I heard you, Don, speak just briefly about a fund that you're starting, but I wanted to know what, or if any, that you guys are aware of any opportunities for young minorities developers to really get their foot in the door that are out there.
Yeah, well, first of all, you're doing the right thing. The idea is that you're getting some experience in the development business and learning that business. And so part of what we've seen is a big void in the access to capital space is someone who has gotten experience working for someone else, working for a company, and has decided that they're going to take that skill set and go and apply that to a development project on their own. And they've shown that they understand, aspects of the business that are critical to succeed in the development space. But then getting the equity capital for that venture or that effort has been very challenging and almost impossible, because those deals are generally done, the smaller deals are done by friends and family. And because of our huge wealth and income disparities, there are very few Black households and very few Black friends and family who can afford to drop hundreds of thousands of several $1 million into a real estate development deal, and which is a longer term investment. And so there's a need for capital for that to bridge that gap. And then of course, as developers grow in experience, there's always a challenge for Black entrepreneurs to gain access to capital, because the allocators are generally white men, and they allocate capital to who they're friendly, and who they're friends with, and who they're comfortable with. And so we are doing it. We see this as not a philanthropic effort, but a tremendous business opportunity. There is an underserved market that's very talented and doesn't have fair access to capital. So providing that fair access to capital will demonstrate that there's a strong business model to deploying capital to Black developers who have not had access to capital in the past, and who can produce very solid returns. So to get into development, you're on the right track doing what you're doing now. And so the next step, obviously, is for you to begin to look and identify a opportunity that's of scale based on your experience to date, and then being able to put it together, and then going into the capital markets to raise capital to do those kinds of deals. And affordable housing is a good entry point. It should not be it's a good entry point, but it's an entry point and a pathway to a broader development future. But some of the top developers in the United States started off in affordable housing. Steve Ross, who's the founder and chairman of Related, which is the largest private developer in the country, started off as an affordable housing lawyer, and then went into doing affordable housing developments, and then went on to build AOL, Time Warner Center, and Hudson Yards, and so forth. George Perez in Miami, another developer, largest condo developer in the state of Florida, started off with affordable housing. So I'd say that's a good pathway for you. And the capital requirements are not as intense, because you can get subsidies and you can get low-income housing tax credits to help support that. And the banks today are much more focused on making those kinds of loans as CRA loans, and the big banks want to make them. So I would look there. And we're doing another platform that is going to be providing bridge financing to developers from conception to get closing on the financing package, so that they can cover the pre-development dollars in affordable housing. So, hopefully first quarter next year, you can come talk to us.
Okay, awesome. Well, I appreciate that.
Sure.
And we have a question, Don, he's a good friend of yours, by Andy Ingram. I just want to bring Andy to the spotlight if he's ready now. Hold on for 1 second. Andy, are you on? I know you had.
Andy's always ready.
So many of you know Andy. Okay. Andy, are you on right now? I see two names. I have you as panelists. You can speak right now if you're ready.
I see him, but he's muted.
Okay, there I am.
There you go. And we don't see you, Andy.
Doyle, great seeing you, and as always, doing a good job. Don, obviously, as you know, we want to be part of that fund, and anything we can do at the National Association of Black Hotel Owners, we always want to embrace that. But something you said interesting. Start my video. Okay, hold on.
There we go.
There we go. Good. Something you said interesting is that how can we, as business people, do more business with Black bankers? So something we talked to Kenneth about a while back is that if we wanted to do a $700 million deal, a Black bank may not be able to do that. But rather than just putting our money in these Black banks, if we took some of our operational accounts and started putting those types of accounts into some of these Black banks, and then really finding the type of leaders that we had with the Coleman Youngs and Marion Barry, who understand business and how they can help stimulate business for Black folks. I mean, what is it that from John's perspective, Doyle's perspective, that we can do collectively as a group?
Well, let me just start with the banking piece. The NBA has done this for a long time, and there's more conversations about it now, that larger corporations want to help and assist Black banks. So if you have a $600 million deal, obviously we can't make loans of that size, but you can carve out maybe 30, 40, 50 million for Blacks and minority owned banks. So that way we can participate in, the money-making opportunity, which for banks is loans, from that perspective. It's for most of our banks right now, we're flush with cash, And so, as a banker, I thought I would never say this, but we don't necessarily need deposits right now. In fact, more deposits at this point kind of shrinks our capital ratios. But we would love to be, in a syndication with larger banks on some of the deals that you all are doing.
Don, that's a discussion we should start with Doyle's group, because I think there's an opportunity there. And as we know, COVID is reaping havoc on our business, but hopefully it will go away at some point. And we've got to get back to the business of housing people in the travel market. But Doyle, I'd love to pursue that.
And then I would add from our perspective, which is different, we're in a different business. We're in the money management and mutual fund business. And it's easy for people, anybody that's got $1,000 or more can invest in aerial mutual funds. We have a family of funds. It can be added to any 401k plan seamlessly without, you don't have to fire anyone. You can add us to the team. You go to your financial advisor and say, why isn't aerial fund one of the options you're showing me that I can invest my wealth in? If you've got a child, we're in the 529 program here in the state of Illinois. So anybody with a child can put money into our funds. But for some reason, I know it's important to support Black banks. We were talking about that earlier, but why people don't think about supporting Black mutual fund companies and give all the money to Fidelity or Vanguard or T. Rowe Price, firms that typically don't look like us and not engaged in our community the way that Ariel is. I'm just not sure where the disconnect is.
John, you're absolutely right. And, we have a 401k at the bank, and one of the members on our finance committee was adamant about getting our fund administrator to bring us some Black funds. And I mean, they just dragged their feet. They gave us all sort of reasons. And so we got rid of them and brought on a new administrator. And I think we have Ariel as an option. And I think we had Lomax. But even within a Black company, in dealing with a non-Black administrator, it took us almost 2 years to get through or get past all the excuses. So you're absolutely right. Ariel may not be top of mind when people want to do mutual funds, but it should be, in these kind of conversations, help that.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the support. It means a lot. Because we're the little guys, fighting against the big guys. If we don't have support from organizations like yours and corporations like yours, we have no hope to really build our businesses.
Hey, John, I'll make a commitment from now, but if Don would allow me to do that we've just got to find a way that we can all work collectively together, so that as the tide rises for some folks, it rises for everybody. And Don, that makes sense. We should consider doing something with John and Doyle and their group, so that we educate folks that these are some opportunities that we may have overlooked in the past. And if you would lead that effort, I'll have our team put a webinar together, just as we're doing tonight, so that John and Doyle and Ken and you can have this whole discussion with people like Warren Thompson, Norm Jenkins, Ken Farron, who are all doing something, but may not be doing it with these guys that we have on the panel.
That's a great idea, and being able to expose aerial and of course industrial to the hotel owners, but also, and then they can expose them and put them on the platform for the employees. And there are tens of thousands of employees within our membership. So I think that's a great idea, and happy to do it.
Well, thank you.
Thanks,
it would mean
John.
a lot. Yeah.
Consider it done.
Thank you.
Great.
We have Ryan Jones coming up right now. Let me just bring this gentleman to the public. Hold on. Give me 1 second, gentlemen. Ryan Jones, you should be. Hello, Ryan. See if this gentleman is.
He's on mute.
He's on mute. Okay, let me get him off. Next on mute.
Well, you know what? You all might have just moved the needle just then.
Hello, can you hear me now?
We can. You need to put your video on.
Correct.
Okay.
There we go.
There we go.
Oh, I'm there.
Yeah.
First of all, I'm not Ryan. I'm his dad, Richard Jones. I'm kind of standing in for him. First of all, we were looking forward to meeting, especially Mr. Rogers and the rest of you guys at the Howard Theater. That didn't happen, of course. And can you read the question probably so folk will get the gist of? Did you get the question, Sarah?
Yes, but if you could present the question again, because I'm trying to keep track of.
I will do that. I will
Okay.
do that. And I hope this doesn't sound too vague. Okay, I said the question is, as a member of the Tuskegee Airmen East Coast chapter and one of the first Black air traffic controllers, I was wondering how we as a group can merge aviation technology into a viable business service to assist our young people. And the reason why I asked that question is I worked for the FAA for 30 years as an air traffic controller. And I started a youth program 25 years ago. It's called Let's Go Up to the 21st Century. Some of my mentors were Tuskegee Airmen. In fact, Mr. Rogers, I understand your dad was in the first group. And I probably had some of those folk as my friends and mentors, and they helped me with my program for young people. It was all about getting our young people involved in air traffic control and pilots and engineers, and we've been very successful with that. And along with that, we're talking to them about, of course, finances and being involved to the extent that they can not only use their careers and later on with retirement, I guess probably employ their finances to a point where when they're retired, they can live pretty good. So I hope that makes sense.
Well, only thing I would say, just to say, yeah, my dad was an original Tuskegee Airman and flew over 125 missions. And of course, we're so extraordinarily proud of him and his service to the country. And he knew even then that he was fighting for a country that wasn't supporting his community back home in America. When he was overseas flying, he realized that when he came back home, it wasn't going to be a place where there was real, true, equal opportunity, even though he was sacrificing everything for his country.
Definitely. So I think, Mr. Jones, is your question answered? Just want to make sure that we have you covered.
Well, no, because I was trying to figure out how aviation is, as far as I'm concerned, when it goes, one of the most technical careers going on, and most of our young people are not even aware of that. And what, again, I said I've been doing for some years is getting our young people involved to the point where they're now pilots and air traffic controllers. And since we're talking about business, I was thinking about how we could probably encourage them to do finance, to, I guess, probably invest in some of the groups that you guys are talking about, if you have any ideas on that issue.
Well, look, I'll tell you that I'm a big believer. By the way, first of all, John, I've been a long admirer of what your dad did and the sacrifice, and I just only imagine how hard it is to risk your life for a country that wasn't willing to give you full citizenship. And so all of us owe him a great, debt and gratitude for his sacrifice to defend our country, but also to set a tone of who we were as a people. In terms of where I think I'm a big believer that we should look to exposure. I think the reason why I was able to do some of the things I've done in business and in life is I got exposed to people doing different things. I had the great fortune of being born and raised in DC. And I remember when the city got home rule in 1974, and we elected our own mayor and city government in 74, and then Barry got elected 78 and so forth. But I saw role models and saw other examples of people doing some very significant things. I spent my last 2 years on Capitol Hill as a page and an intern. So I worked for Ron Dellums, Charlie Rangel, and then my last year of high school, John Conyers. So I was able to see Black men doing some significant things. And so I understood that there was a bigger universe out there for what I could do. What I've tried to do as a business person is to support exposure and introduction into business through education. So in Miami, for example, we've helped found and helped continue to fund on a long-term basis a equivalent of a charter school in the poorest area in Miami, but provide these young kids, it's called Care Elementary, a private school education with top teachers and all the resources and technical resources for the kids would get at a $40,000 a year private school. And we've also funded entrepreneurial academies. For example, in DC, we were part of the DC Hospitality High School, and then we created an entrepreneurial academy within the Hospitality High School. And I think one of the things that we can do, and part of what our theme was in DC's Hospitality High School, which was at Roosevelt until it was closed, and then the DC government took over the hospitality school. But what we did is, in the Entrepreneurial Academy, we brought top business leaders from DC and around the country who would come to DC so they could speak to the young kids and their high school students and let them know of what the possibilities were out here. So I think that exposing our young people to entrepreneurship, aviation, for example, and other entrepreneurial and professional fields early enough to where it can spark an interest and them learning and to find out more about it. Because we, can't take for granted. I mean, many of our young people don't have access to a Doyle Mitchell or a John Rogers. And maybe they are fortunate enough to read about them, but the media does not portray Black business people in a positive setting. So we have to rely on a few publications, but we need to do more to expose our young people to entrepreneurship and finance much earlier. And if we do that, what everything tells us, if that is done, then they are going to, as adults, have a broad array of career opportunities. And if we give them the educational fundamentals, and I think one of the biggest travesties in our country is our failure of our public school system, which has failed to educate our young people and mainly young Black kids, and sends them out into the world ill-prepared academically to compete, and then saying, okay, you take this, you're this disadvantage, and okay, here, go out here and compete. And I think we've got to, as business people, we have to be a part of solving that problem too. Hopefully that answers your question.
And we have David up next. I know we were going to start introductions right now, but I wanted to, let David and Danielle, I apologize if I'm mispronouncing that name, present their questions to you too, and then we'll start with the official panel discussion. So David, I'm coming to you right now. You should be able to David, are you on? Or let me see if ask that mute again. I don't know if David, let's give him like 5 more seconds. If not, come back to David. I'll go to Danielle right now. So, okay, no, David is on. All right, David, unmute. You're on mute right now. If you can, there you go. Go ahead.
Okay. You guys hear me?
Yes.
All right, great. Thank you very much. It's really a pleasure to hear you gentlemen and your experiences. I'm a 33-year-old real estate developer in Detroit, Michigan from New York. Moved here about 6 years ago to rehab single family, small multifamily homes in neighborhoods across the city. One thing we've noticed, and away from the access to capital and many of the challenges you've mentioned, it feels in cities like Detroit, which are kind of big, very Black and poor cities, there's often a desire from a political perspective to secure as much power as possible. And we found some friction because we raise all of our money from our friends and family, from our networks, competing effectively with the powers that be that want to sort of pick winners and losers. So my question for you guys is, how have you found, what are some tips and tricks you found to be most effective in navigating political friction when it comes to folks who want to secure as much power for themselves as possible and kind of pick their chosen ones to lead certain development? In Detroit, the land bank owns a ton of land, and so they're a critical component to getting development done in a city like this one.
Well, I'll just give you a short answer. I'm sure everybody's kind of chomping at the bit to answer this one. But I would just say to start, you have to go to the politicians and let them know what you're doing, who you are, introduce yourself, let them know what your mission is. And you've been in Detroit for 3 years, so it takes time to develop relationships, political relationships in a new city. But you have to do it. You have to get involved in the political process. My style is not always to be on the inside. I like to be right on the outside of the inner circle. And you give a few dollars to the candidates, the council members, and so that they know at least you're not a foe. So I don't get terribly active, but I know the players in DC. I've sprinkled a few shillings in their campaigns, and so when things come up, they don't necessarily have any reason to vote against what our interest would be.
I mean, I can tell you, look, I grew up in part in Detroit from 1968 to 73. And I went back to Detroit. I mean, I have fond memories. And also John Conyers was a long-term congressman from Detroit. So, and that's who I worked for when I was in high school. He was a mentor to me. And I mean, a big part of, some of the things I was able to accomplish was because of him. So I went back to Detroit to try to build a building myself. And the politics at the time, Kilpatrick was mayor, and the politics at the time were so challenging that I said, you know what, we're moving on. And that's unfortunate. But what I learned over the years is build a constituency for your project or your business. That means build a community constituency, because, politicians are moved by voters and they are risk averse when it comes to voters. And so what I learned, trial and error, is I learned to utilize the community. You have to have a good product, but if you have a good product that's in their best interest, then engage them to help you level the playing field politically within the politics, because they are just as frustrated generally as you are, because that same unfair system, that same kind of insider game has created a lower quality of life for them, and they're fighting against it. So they'll line up with you. And then the media, who's distrusting from, I saw over the years how the media was used by white developers and white business people to slow down Black business people over the years. And so I made it a point to kind of understand the dynamics of the media. And so many times you can get them to step in, and they love to look at politics. So you can get them to step in and level the playing field. When I went down to Miami Beach to build a Royal Palm Hotel, I write about this in my book. I went down from Washington, D.C., 1995 on vacation, and then I saw a deal there. And so early 1996, I bid on this project to build a Royal Palm Hotel in South Beach. And little did I, and it was a project that was created because of a settlement of a tourism boycott by Black Americans. So part of the thing was to provide more diversity in the tourism industry in Miami. And there was a boycott because the politicians snubbed Nelson Mandela when he was, touring the world after being freed from prison. And so the NAACP and others led a boycott. So the settlement was many things, and one of them was to build a Black-owned hotel. So this was supposed to be a Black-owned hotel. I bid on it. Turned out that there were 7 other bidders. It was supposed to be a consolation prize for a major white company. Mm-hmm. And so the game was rigged, the mayor was against me, and so forth. Well, I learned how to deal with brass knuckle and hand-to-hand combat politics in Washington, D.C., and I found that skill was pretty portable. So ultimately, I figured out how to build a constituency And then ultimately the top newspaper in the community was the Miami Herald. And I got them to endorse my team as 100% Black owned, et cetera. And the mayor was a presiding officer of the city commission that awarded the project. And you should have seen the look on his face when he when the clerk handed him the ballot and he had to announce it was my deal and they had to award the deal to me. So the point is that there are ways to win, and entrepreneurs figure out ways to win, playing by the rules, but playing to win. And I think if you look at other resources and expose unfairness, then you got a much better shot.
Thank you very much. It's really great advice.
And we'll go to Danielle. I apologize if I butchered your name for one moment. Let me just get here. Okay, Danielle, if you should be on.
Hi. First of all, I have to say, listening to each of you tonight has been so exciting, because if my grandfather, who was also a Tuskegee Airman, were alive, and I told him that I had a chance to talk to all of you at once, he'd ask me what the date was, and he would probably box that number that he played tonight, 10-22-20. So I just want to just take a minute. I know you guys are getting ready to go into your panel, and thank you for your time and your talent tonight, sharing with us. But the thing I was most excited about, flying into DC and meeting you in person tonight, which unfortunately we're not able to do. And Don, I can't wait to talk to you about Miami Beach and Royal Palm. My goodness, how exciting that must have been, and so long ago, but yet still so relevant for what's happening with Black tourism here in Miami now. But I have been really struggling with the pandemic and with turning 50 and having spent 20 years practicing law, big firms, small firms in New York, DC, and Boston. And I see an opportunity, and like you said, entrepreneurs are going to be entrepreneurs. And I want to jump at it, but I feel that the moment for an independent RIA has gone, and the opportunity to join a large firm. I know you consider yourself a small timer, John, but you mentioned earlier, but not in the eyes of many of us who look up to you. That would seem impossible, that someone with a career in the law would feel irrelevant at this age of my life. So I've just really been struggling with how I make that jump, and just really want to learn. And maybe being an RIA is not the right move. Maybe servicing in that space is a better move. And would just love to hear your thoughts about whether you'd be welcome an opportunity to talk with me at greater length outside of tonight, rather than take up everybody's time at the end.
Well, sure, I'd be happy to. We speak to a lot of groups around in leadership around how we can get more African Americans into being a registered investment advisor, and also different organizations of financial planners and the like. And because we are so poorly represented in the community. I started my career as a financial advisor. I spent 2.5 years at William Blair here in Chicago doing that before I started Ariel. And I know how hard it is, so I'd love to get into I'd love to talk with you offline and, talk about the challenges and the reasons to do it and different pathways.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I just completed a CPWA certification at Chicago's booth, and moved here from a few years rather, in Santa Monica. So between having these networks between Boston, New York, DC, now Florida and LA, I'm like, okay, I've been planting so many seeds and building so many networks. Like, which one do I harvest? Like, where do I jump? How do I jump? And I just feel like I've got a jetpack, but I just don't know where to land. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes, so I did say we would stop promptly at 7, a tad bit behind, but I wanted to kind of just get into introductions and let the partner organizations present themselves. So first and foremost, to all the attendees, I want to express my appreciation for all you all joining. And secondly, especially the panelists. So this organization that's hosting the events, the Catalyst Network Foundation, I am the founder and executive director. Pretty much we're a youth enrichment, youth professional development nonprofit. Our goal is to develop the hard, soft, and practical skills of our high school youth. Launched in 2011 in New York City, and we expanded our operations in Washington, D.C. in 2005. And pretty much with this event, we call it a meeting of the minds. So we've done literally over 25 meeting of the minds in New York City and Washington, D.C. And the meeting of the minds, we just want to highlight concerning topics to the Black community that do not receive mainstream attention. We try to illuminate these topics and get panelists that have a very compelling perspective that can provide insight that could be beneficial to all of us. And we try to bring partner organizations together so we can take practical steps to actually execute on whatever initiative that we're working on. So we've did school to prison pipeline, New York City gentrification, Washington, D.C. gentrification, position of power one, Black ownership in the cannabis industry last week, and a variety of other. They're usually all in person. This is our first due to COVID and things of that nature. This is the first one that is completely virtual. So I know we've just been carrying on with the conversation, so I don't want to provide too much to the Catalyst Network Foundation. I do want to first highlight the partner organizations and let them say a few words, and then also the sponsors who are actually on the call right now. And then there'll still be Q&A in between our conversation, and then 15-minute Q&A afterwards. So at the moment, I'm going to have, if Everett Browning is on representing 100 Black men. Let me just see if I can identify one of the, he's representing 100 Black men, and Everett Browning. All right, you should be on now. Let me know if you're on and ready to speak on behalf of your organization. Okay.
Hey, good evening. Can you all hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Good evening. I'm Everett Browning, the Executive Vice President for the 100 Black Men of Prince George's County, Maryland. It's truly an honor to partner with Catalyst Network Foundation and other community organization leadership to host our distinguished panel. For the past 57 years, the 100 Black Men of America mission to improve the quality of life within our community and enhance education and economic opportunities has expanded to 110 chapters domestically, internationally, reaching over 125,000 youth annually. Our motto is what they see is what they'll be. And through our mentoring pillars of education, health and wellness, economic empowerment, our Prince George's County chapter has established a Saturday Leadership Academy, a Silicon 100 coding and robotics, a 100-way golf, a pathway to success, a boys read club, financial literacy, investment challenge, and scholarship programs to serve our youth. In addition, we established a Collegiate 100 initiative with Bowie State University. While financial resources is definitely required to execute our mission, we have found the most valuable asset we can offer is our time and lessons we learned as Black men navigating through professional and personal pursuits. You know, we all recognize the sacrifices made to put us in positions of success and feel privileged whenever we can pass our blessings forward. Many, if not all of us on this call, have been trailblazers, knocking down barricades, and often when we look to open doors for others, we haven't seen the next generations always prepared to walk through and take advantage. And one undeniable truth is that the breadth and scope of the mission to uplift our kids and community is bigger than one person or one organization. Therefore, it's incumbent on all of us to forego our competitive nature as it pertains to resources and recognitions and continue to champion collaborative efforts like this extraordinary meeting of the minds events that we're having today, so we can invest in kids and families who are trying to go from that generational curse to building generational wealth. So once again, I thank you for letting the 100 Black Men partner with you. We look forward for the opportunity to speak with any of you, engage with any of you, and continue to make a difference. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to bring up Lionel Gaines. He represents Morehouse College, DC Alumni Association. So give me 1 second as I bring Lionel Gaines to the platform. Lionel, are you on? You should be, let us know. Hello, Lionel? Should be on right now. Okay.
Good evening, gentlemen. First, I just want to thank the Catalyst Network for the important programming that they put on and the important conversations that we're having. And so my name is Lionel Gaines. I'm the recording secretary of the Morehouse College Alumni Association DC Metro chapter. And our primary function is recruiting high school students to Morehouse College, raising funds for scholarships, and also mentoring young men, because as they matriculate through Morehouse College, not only will they become graduates of Morehouse, but they will become members of the community. And our alumni association is very engaged in the area. We have a send-off that we do, sending the young men to Morehouse. We also have a community college pipeline where we're recruiting community college students to go to Morehouse. And but our main function is just making sure that we raise young men. And one other thing I'll say is that during the pandemic, we've had to change and transition to meet the needs of families. And so we have a virtual 5K that will be running through the first week in November to raise funds for students as they attend Morehouse College. And that information can be found at morehousedc.org. But also, I just want to add, to President Mitchell, we're proud customers of Industrial Bank, and proud to see you, and to Mr. Rogers, we admire the work that Aerial Investments has done and the things that you're doing, not only in the investment space, but also in the community, and especially at high schools. And to Mr. Peebles, proud to always see you at events and the way that you are moving, not only on the West Coast, the East Coast, but around the country. And we're just proud of you as being a native Washingtonian. And also, I just want to say, President Mitchell, I was proud for you to join us at the Mayor's Office on African American Affairs wealth building event last night. And so glad to see you again. And I just want to say thank you to the Catalyst Network for all that you're doing. These are important conversations, and it's just great to be a part of it. So on behalf of the Morehouse College Alumni Association DC Metro chapter, gentlemen, I just want to say thank you, and thank you for your time.
Definitely. And we're going to go to Renee Mims right now, who's representing the Greater Washington Area Chapter Women's Lawyer Division, National Bar Association. So Renee, I'm going to take it you for a moment. Renee, are you on? Let me she's there at the moment.
You're doing a great job over there, Laurel.
I'm trying my best.
Moderating and running the tech as well.
Renee, are you on? Let me ask mute if she, I don't know. Maybe, okay, she's talking right now. She may be on. Hello, Renee.
I can hear you. Can you see me?
We can't see you at the moment. Let me ask.
We can hear you.
We can hear you.
Tech issues. You want to go to the next partner while I try to figure out this?
Okay, no problem. No problem. We'll come back. Just notify me. No problem at all. Let me just change role to attendee, and give me 1 second and see if Nancy is on, representing the Greater Washington Urban League, but I think she's not on at the moment. I do want to illuminate some of the other organizations that we do have as partner organizations. So we have MOT, which is Management Leadership for Tomorrow. Just want to shout them out. We have Twigo and John Rogers. I believe, did you speak at their gala or event? They said that you're a strong supporter. Twigo, but so they wanted to say hello, by the way. But they said
we're supportive. Yeah, we've been longtime supporters from the very beginning of Twigo, and also John Rice's MLT. We've been supportive of too.
Perfect, definitely. Other partner organizations that I do want to highlight: Howard University Alumni Club of Greater Washington D.C., National Coalition of 100 Black Women, Metropolitan Washington D.C. chapter, the Black Alumni Council of Columbia University, the Washington D.C. chapter of Hampton. I'm a Hampton alum, so I got to be biased here. Shout out to Hampton. the National Black NBA Association, and I think London should be present to represent. London McLeod, I'm going to spotlight you at the moment. If you're ready to speak on behalf of the Black NBA Association, Washington, D.C. chapter, let me know. It should be on. Oh, there we go. Go ahead, London.
Perfect. Hello. Well, thank you. Thank you, gentlemen.
She went on mute. Okay.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me? Okay. I'm no longer on mute, right? Okay. Thank you again, and thank you to the Catalyst Foundation for this informative webinar on Black wealth tonight. We really appreciate it. Once again, my name is London McLeod, and I am actually a native Washingtonian, so I truly and sincerely appreciate everything Doyle and Don that you've discussed tonight. Mr. Rogers, thank you so much. We admire you. The National Black NBA Association, especially the DC chapter, follows you closely, so we appreciate all that you have done. The Black MBA Association is a national organization representing Black MBA candidates, students, and entrepreneurs. We have numerous members that are not MBA students, so we are also big on having members that are actual entrepreneurs and giving them the opportunity as well. Our focus is to provide economic and intellectual wealth to the African American community through webinars, networking events, and seminars similar to tonight. So thank you, gentlemen. We really appreciate it. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you. We actually have Angel Stewart on, so I'm going to let her speak on behalf of Twigo, but we do have one special guest. He's actually a upcoming NBA lottery pick, and he has a few questions that he wanted to present to you gentlemen. So I just wanted to, and he's actually working out. So I know I wanted to just highlight him before he leaves for a moment. So give me 2 seconds if you can allow me to, gentlemen. So promote. Hello, he should be on because I have with. Yes.
How you doing?
Doing well, doing well. How about you just give the gentleman a brief background on yourself? I know you just played in Florida State, and they just read a report, and you're projected to potentially be the lottery pick for either New York Knicks or Chicago Bulls. But I know you have a couple questions before you get back to doing what you need to do. But introduce yourself to the panelists and the attendees, and give your questions off.
Well, first of all, thank you for just having this, giving me this opportunity to be here to kind of pick you guys' brain and just learn all I can from you guys while I'm on this call. But first of all, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Patrick Williams. I'm actually from Charlotte. I went to West Charlotte for high school, and I went to Florida State last year. I played one season there, and now I'm going to the NBA draft. And I was just wondering if you guys had any advice for me as it pertains to building wealth at an early stage, and just becoming a businessman. I want to do more than just be a basketball player. I think basketball is a business. I'm starting to learn that more and more every day. So just any advice you have for me as far as being a businessman or being stepping into this light that I am.
I'll be brief, but the first thing I would say is don't blow your money. Develop banking relationships. Hopefully one of them is a Black bank wherever you are, and invest with aerial management. And then think about what you want to do when basketball is over. So if you want to own a hotel, you got people right here that have done that. Don and Nabhood, and save your money so that you can, you can build that next phase in your career. Always be looking forward, and save your money so that you will have it to do.
Yes, sir.
Well, I would say a couple of things. First, the Knicks and the Bulls are my two favorite teams. Actually, my former teammate, Steve Mills, was the president of the Knicks. And, I played basketball at Princeton. And so got to follow them really closely. But I would say, the world's greatest investor is Warren Buffett. And he always has a couple key things to talk about. And one of them is always to invest within your circle of competence. Only invest in businesses that you truly understand, that you love reading about, love thinking about, love studying. That's really critically important. My favorite stock right now, one of them is Madison Square Garden Entertainment. It's a publicly traded company. They own Madison Square Garden, all the land around it, all the air rights above it. They own the Tao restaurant chain. They're building a new arena in Las Vegas called the Sphere. They own the Chicago Theater here in Chicago. But it's something I understand, because I love going to arenas. I love going to games. I was a vendor at Wrigley Field and Sox Park growing up in the old Chicago Stadium. So first thing is invest in businesses you understand, stick within things that you really, again, love to read about and study and think about. The second thing is to be a long-term investor. Our logo at Ariel Mutual Funds is a turtle, to remind people that old Aesop's fable, slow and steady wins the race, and to be patient as you think about investing. And again, what Warren Buffett's motto there is always, he reminds people that last century, the Dow Jones Industrial Average started at 66 and ended at over 11,000. And the reason he talks about that is just to remind people that inevitably, if you invest in stocks, they have their ups and their downs, but they always sort of rise over the long run. If you can take a long-term perspective, you'll be very successful. And then the final thing that I believe in is the idea that being a contrarian investor, whatever industries you choose to invest in, whatever businesses you choose to invest in, try not to follow the crowd and buy what worked yesterday that everybody's talking about. The great investments always come from the least expected areas, often in areas that are out of favor that people hate. Just like your basketball life, the best passers are the ones that have great vision. It's the same in investing. Those that have great vision to be able to see the future, what's going to work 3 to 5 years from now, make the most money, not buying what worked the last 3 to 5 years. And Warren says, don't invest while you're looking through your rear view mirror. You want to be looking out forward and thinking forward. What's going to be really successful 5 years from now? And it's very hard to do. People get swept up in the euphoria of the moment and what's worked yesterday. But that's really a recipe for disaster. And then finally, have some mentors and people you can talk to about investing. Just people who just have your interest at heart, not trying to sell you anything. Who just love to talk to you and help you think these things through. And I'm sure whatever team you are with, there'll be some people there who can help to do that. We try to do that a lot here at Ariel. And those would be my sort of suggestions.
Sir, thank you.
I would add one. I point out one of the things that Warren Buffett says is and talks about is the concept of compounding. And so what that did is it controlled his spending, personal spending, especially early on. So if money compounds and multiplies every 9 years or every 7 years, then if he's going to buy this watch for $1,000 in 20 years, it's 10,000. 1,000 is 10,000 or more. And so he asked himself, does he want to spend $10,000 for that $1,000 watch? And ultimately, he deployed his capital into his business. And so one of the things, and I speak to the NBA Players Association generally annually, they set up a real estate committee. And so when Grant Hill was playing, I used to give Grant some guidance on how to invest in real estate, and that's what he does now. Magic Johnson made much more money in doing real estate and doing business than he did playing basketball. There's a young man, a player, Pat Connaughton, I just spoke to last week, who's doing a small fund, a real estate fund with other NBA players. He plays for Milwaukee. And what Pat has done is some of the ownership of the Bucks are part of his financial mentors. One of the things that you will have in the NBA as a professional athlete is you will have access to some of the top business leaders around the country or the world. And some of the players who have used that well, you know, like Grant picking up the phone and just calling me out of the blue, or, you know, many other players, or Alonzo Mourning when he was playing for the Heat in Miami, got into real estate, is that using that access to get information. But what's going to happen, and when you're young, so you're going to want to be able to get some reward and some tangible reward for your hard work, and so you're going to spend some of your money. But then you need to settle it down. LaFonso Ellis has been a good friend, and when he came into the NBA, LaFonso really lived very modestly with his family, and so therefore he planned for the future. So what I would recommend is you look to find some good mentors who can help you find some good, strong advisors to manage your money while you play, while you mature as an adult, and as you begin to think about, as you begin to educate yourself about business and money, and don't be afraid to ask questions from anybody. I mean, instead of going out to clubs every night after a game when you're traveling, meet a business person and go out to dinner with them and learn from them and build relationships. One, you won't be playing forever. So you can come out of it with strong relationships and guidance and mentors. And one of the things is I think all of us played basketball. I know Laurel was a top high school basketball player. John was, played at Princeton. I played in high school. And so being, playing team sports teaches you all kinds of skills that will help you tremendously in business one day. And so the key is to start planning for your career afterwards. But the direct correlation of hard work and results, being able to make adjustments in real time, being able to work well with others, being able to know your role and know your position and play it. Those skill sets will be very helpful to you in business, which is one of the reasons I like to hire former athletes. So I would encourage you to get yourself educated, put your money in a safe place, very safe right now. And as you mature, then you can begin to make decisions. But don't waste your money on depreciating assets. I mean, that is one of the biggest mistakes, buying a depreciating asset. So, get good advice and go from there. And you're from Charlotte. I'm redeveloping Brooklyn Village in Charlotte right now with 12 buildings in Uptown. And one of the things about Charlotte is the banking capital, second largest banking center in the country. So you're going to probably know some smart people and be able to have access to many others. So, I mean, you got a lot of opportunity, and the key is to use that as a building block. And you're thinking in the right way right now by asking yourself what you're going to do after basketball. But don't undervalue basketball. It's taken you a long way, and it's going to take you a lot further.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, thank you guys for your time, and thank you for pick your brain a little bit. I've definitely, learned a lot just from being on this call. I just thank you for your time.
Yeah, and just quickly, are you a Nike person, or?
You say that again?
Are you working with Nike?
Well, I'm not working with anybody yet, but I mean, Nike is for sure something that a company that I love. I mean, you see the show.
Well, great. I think I lost you there for a second.
Good luck to you.
Yeah,
John, aren't you on the board of Nike? You're on the board of Nike, correct?
I am. So it's just wanted to ask. A little biased. Well, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Definitely. Okay. Appreciate it, Patrick. Now, Angel, I'm going to bring you up to represent Twigo. I know we mentioned you guys shortly, but I wanted to present you now. Angel, are you on?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, I'm on. Let's see if I can. Here I am.
Yes.
Hello. Great, thank you. Hi, John. Yes, John has been a great supporter of the Twigo Foundation. Twigo has been around since '89, graduating our first class of MBAs with the class of 1992. So since the MBA class of 92, Twigo has graduated MBA students from diverse backgrounds who are all working or interested in working on the finance and investments industry. And so now we have a cohort of approximately 3,000 people working in financial services all over the world. I hear a lot of feedback. Are you hearing that too? Yeah, no, we okay? Okay, all right.
Just a little.
Just a little? I have
Just a
my
little.
wonderful microphone here.
You're good.
But I'll be brief. And so Twigo alumni, Twigo fellows, if they're currently in business school, they're focused across the investments world, investment management, equity research, investment banking, private equity, real estate, venture capital, all of those spheres. And now they are at all levels of the industry. And we continue to do our work. We meet our students as they are beginning their MBA programs. They can attend any MBA program in the country, although most of them are arguably gathered at the big MBA programs, Columbia, Harvard, Wharton, Chicago, Stanford, and probably about 17 other schools. And so if you are a person of color serious about pursuing a career in the investment space, investments, financial services space, think about the Twigo Foundation. We generally begin recruiting students at the first of the year, and that's the incoming class. So as the same time that you're applying to business school or thinking about business school, that's the time to apply to the Twigo Foundation. Even if you haven't been admitted into a business school yet, we still want to meet you. We are blessed and fortunate to have people like John Rogers who often speak to our students and help them as they are making their way into the industry. And then we also work with all of our alumni and people who are also a part of the Twigo sphere. Maybe they weren't our fellows, Laurel, we're in touch with you in terms of helping them with their careers. I am always looking for talent, always looking for talent of color in investments, for many of the opportunities that are shared with Twigo. So please look us up. I'm going to spell Twigo for everyone who doesn't know how to spell it. It's T-O-I-G-O. And you can find us at twigofoundation.org. Anything else, Laurel?
No, you pretty much covered everything. I just want to co-sign your organization and what you said. Like she said, I'm not a Twigo fellow or alum, but I feel like one, just the way Angel supports, if you are literally thinking about going to business school and working in alternative investments, whether that's private equity, hedge fund, or just in investment banking on the sell side. I mean, I went to Fuqua and recently graduated with my Duke MBA. I don't see another organization that, is more impactful and just the network that they have. So I want to co-sign the organization completely. And if you work for a bank, they're probably partnered with your bank, but if not, and if you work on a buy side, definitely connect with them to be a partner organization, but it's top flight and their network is strong. So if you are thinking about pursuing an MBA, I just want to co-sign Twigo. And I'm a MOT alum, I want to co-sign MOT, they're across the board. But if you're just interested in finance and Wall Street, I just wanted to co-sign you,
Great.
Angel.
Thank you. Thanks for having us. And good job, guys. I've been on the call for a while, enjoying it. Thank you very much. Thanks, Laurel.
No problem. I want to illuminate some of the other partner organizations so we can continue with the conversation. We have Phi Beta Sigma. The president, Michael, I think he was on a flight, so he's unable to join us. We do have Thursday Network, Greater Washington Urban League, and I don't know if Nancy's on the line, as well as the Washington Bar Association, the Minority Cannabis Business Association, and the Association of Black Psychologists. So those were the other organizations. And then I'm pretty sure you guys are familiar with our panelists, but I do want to just illuminate their background a little bit. As I mentioned before, I'll just start with Don. And I always like to say this, Don and the People's Corporation they're the biggest supporter of the Catalyst Network Foundation, and they're actually a sponsor for this event. And as you know, Don is the founder, chairman, and CEO of the People's Corporation, offices Manhattan, New York, Washington, D.C. They have portfolio all across the United States, over $6 billion and development projects that they have working on in 7 million square feet in cities like San Francisco, New York, LA, Philadelphia, Washington, D.C., Boston, Chicago, Miami. Don, let me know if I miss a city. I know that you're launching your $500 million investment fund for minority and women developers. I'm going to ask you a question about that as well. I'm going to let you guys illuminate into your background a little more. John Rogers, I want to just illuminate your background as well. So the founder and CEO of Ariel Investments. One thing I do want to talk about and present a question to you. I believe you got your seed funding from the Howard University Endowment Fund. Let me know if that's incorrect, but I believe it was with $100,000, but I'll let you talk about that later in a question. But I know at one point in 2004, you're managing $17.5 billion, over $10 billion in assets under management. If I'm not mistaken, it is the largest Black-owned, Black-led mutual fund in the United States or world, for that matter. You can correct me if I'm mistaken. And Doyle Mitchell, the president and CEO of Industrial Bank. I actually have 3 accounts with Industrial Bank, all business accounts. And when I did my research, because I know you guys have, I believe, 600 million in assets and 350 million in loans and leases. And from my estimation, you guys are actually the second largest Black-owned bank across the nation at the moment. And you guys have been strong supporters of the Catalyst Network Foundation as sponsors as well. So going back to Doyle and Don, just being sponsors, I want to express my appreciation. I don't know if you guys want to say anything as sponsors of this event, but I do want to just highlight that first and foremost.
Yes, you're welcome. And I think this has turned out to be a great evening.
Definitely.
I want to just compliment you on your leadership for creating the organization and exposing our young people around the country to entrepreneurship and leadership. Thank you. Definitely.
So now I just wanted to get in a question, and attendees, I'm still going to allow you guys the ability in between my panel discussion with them to present your questions. But for you 3 gentlemen, you guys were pretty much raised by entrepreneurs, Black entrepreneurs be particular. And John, yours date back to your grandfather, if I'm not mistaken, in Tulsa, Oklahoma, you know, the Black Wall Street era. And I think he had a savings and loan bank, had a 65-room hotel, and owned some real estate as well. So one, I just want to talk about how important entrepreneurship was for all of you all, and how it's important to raise other Black folks to really think about being owners and entrepreneurs and hiring Blacks and putting them in a comfortable position, because you guys were seem to be raised by entrepreneurs, especially though your grandfather starting Industrial Bank as well. So I just, anyone want to take the floor in regards to just being raised by entrepreneurs and importance?
Well, I guess I'll just start. That it's nice of you to mention my great-grandfather. My great-grandfather, his name was J.B. Stratford. He owned the Stratford Hotel in Tulsa. He was also a real leader in the community there, fighting for economic justice in Tulsa. And of course, he lost his hotel and all of his assets in the race massacre that occurred almost 100 years ago. So he started, I think, a tradition in our family of many, many entrepreneurs. My grandfather had his own law practice. My mom and my dad both had their own law practices and were out trying to get customers. Of course, when they were doing so, you couldn't dream of working for the major anchor institutions here in our community, the big corporations or museums or hospitals or universities, even though that's still a challenge today for all of us as entrepreneurs. But I would say I was also greatly inspired here in Chicago by some of the giant entrepreneurs that I got to know when I was coming of age and coming home from college. You know, George Johnson was my hero, who created Johnson Products, which was known for Afro Sheen and Ultra Sheen hair care products. But he also started Independence Bank, that became the largest Black bank in the country. He started Soul Train with Don Cornelius. He was very, very philanthropic. He worked with Black businesses all the time, whether it was advertising in Essence or Ebony, or working with Black accountants and law firms. He was all in. And of course, supported Dr. King during the civil rights movement. He was kind of my hero. But I was also influenced by John Johnson, who built Ebony and Jet. You know, these guys were real live people. You'd see them around town. You could go up and touch them and learn from them and be mentored by them. And the bottom line was, not only did they have great businesses that employed people, and they didn't, not only did they work with other Black businesses, but they supported the civil rights agenda. They supported progressive political candidates. They made a difference in our community and proved that Black entrepreneurship really mattered.
Don or Joel, the idea you want to speak on just kind of that entrepreneurial spirit and being raised by entrepreneurs, especially your mother, Don, being a Black woman entrepreneur. I don't know if you wanted to speak on that.
Sure. I mean, look, I was born in Washington, D.C., the seat of our government. And so politics was always pretty present in what was going on in our household. My mother was born in D.C. as well as her 4 sisters. And my mother had me at 19 years old. So that changed her life. And she had to grow up very quickly. And then she and my father were divorced when I was 5. And my mother had been an administrative assistant on Capitol Hill. And that was kind of her introduction into politics. And then I was growing up during the 1960s, and I was very conscious of the 1960s civil rights movement, the assassination of Dr. King, the assassination of Robert Kennedy. And I remember those things. And my mother and I moved to Detroit, Michigan, and my mother started in the real estate business as a real estate broker and a sales agent first, and then started her own real estate brokerage. And so I spent, from the time I was 8 till 13 in Detroit, Michigan. And my mother was a business owner for most of my time there. And so I got exposed to real estate very early. And also, my best friend growing up, his father founded Motown Records, Berry Gordy. And so as a result, I got a chance to, everybody was listening to Motown and, Stevie Wonder, the Jackson 5, all of them were, going over to Berry's house. And so Detroit at that point was the center of music. And Berry was a major entrepreneur. Had a gigantic home that was built for, an automobile captain of industry. And then, down the street from my aunts, were Eddie Kendricks of the Temptations, Norman Whitfield, who wrote most of the music. And then there were Black doctors and Black lawyers. My uncle was a doctor. And so I got a chance to kind of see Black professionals and Black entrepreneurs, especially in a space that was really kind of that I was into, which was music. And in the building my mother and I lived in, Dennis Edwards of the Temptations lived in the building. Melvin Franklin lived in the building. Damon Harris, when he came and sung and replaced Eddie Kendricks, he lived in the building. I used to see Dinah Ross coming up and down the elevator. So it was a very unique experience in Detroit. And I think that formed me as to kind of think broader. And I came back to DC, which was super conservative. Back in 1973, the next year, the city got home rule. And my mother thought it would be important for me to learn politics. And so she had me, volunteer for the city council race, and she had me volunteer for a civil rights activist, Marion Barry. And so I was 14 years old, and I was volunteering for his campaign. He got elected to the city council. And then 4 years later, he became mayor. I remember going to the inaugural ball as a guest of the chairman of the city council back in 1975. Sterling Tucker. So I saw a lot of politics, and I spent my last couple of years of high school on Capitol Hill. So I saw the connection between politics and business. And then I saw, Black political leaders. That was the emergence of the Congressional Black Caucus, which I was fortunate enough to actually chair the foundation board from, the last 3 years of President Obama's term in office. And so I would say that my inspiration for business was really more about, I wanted to make a nice living and support myself and one day have a family and be able to support them. But I was I was focused on fairness. And I got that from my mother. My mother, when she left Detroit, she had a job lined up in DC to be the sales director of a subdivision in urban renewal in Southwest DC. And they hired her over the phone. And when she showed up, they weren't expecting a Black woman. And at the end of the day, they fired her because they said that the sales team and the market wasn't ready for a Black woman to be the head of the sales team. So she went to being a secretary and got a temporary job at Fannie Mae. And fortunately, one of the senior executives at Fannie Mae found out about her experience owning her own business and so forth. And then they put her into a management position, and she ended up being a mid-level executive at Fannie Mae, and then ultimately went back on her own. But I saw the unfairness of our system early on. And so what motivated me as a business person is trying to make a difference about making our system fair and more equitable when it comes to Black people. And I learned that from my mother, from my grandparents, from the Marion Barrys, and the John Conyers and so forth. And so I feel that as a business person, I have a much greater responsibility than just making some money. And so I've tried to live my career as trying to be a transformer.
Doyle, do you want to? Okay, go ahead.
Just quickly, I think the things that I learned from my parents that helped me in business. Obviously, I didn't start Industrial Bank, and in many ways, being the third generation, there are always some difficulties in trying to keep the business going and grow it, take it to the quote unquote next level. But my father taught me some good lessons early on. And one of them was keep, the bank's money and your money separate. And what that meant was the bank's money is the bank's money. That's a totally different entity. And he used an example to really illustrate that. I think I was in, second or third or fourth grade, and I did a book report, and I needed to make Xerox copies. And he charged me like 16 cents a page. And I could not believe that he did that. But the point was, the bank is the bank. And if you need something personal, then you have to compensate the bank for that. I've seen a lot of small businesses where owners take money out of their company before they can really afford it. And then as a banker, when you look at the financial statements of that business, you may say, well, there's not enough capital in the business. And so, it kind of illustrates the same point I was making, that for a small and growing business, you need to leave the money in the business as long as you can. The other thing that my parents showed me, we were obviously more fortunate than quite a few people around us, and particularly a lot of our customers at the bank. But my father spoke to everybody. I can remember driving in the car from Georgia Avenue to U Street sometimes, and people would shout out, "Hey, Mr. Mitchell," and he may not even remember their names, but he spoke to everybody. My parents never looked down on anyone, and they helped me to keep my feet firmly on planet Earth, particularly my mother's, because she was the disciplinarian in the family. So you couldn't get too high and mighty around her. And she was a music teacher, by the way, Don. And so there was music in my family. My grandfather was an opera singer. My cousin was a musician. And I grew up loving music. And if I could make money in the music business, then I'd give somebody else this job.
Same here.
I'm still trying to figure that one out, but.
I had a question in regards to, and this is actually more practical because as other professionals that are attendees right now, and I'm actually bringing it to you, John, and I'm bringing it to you, well, all three of you guys, in regards to like an HBC, like Howard University, their endowment fund, I believe provided you the seed capital, John. And I know I went to Hampton undergrad, and some other individuals went to FAMU and other schools. And I believe that the Divine Nine said that they all put their accounts at Doyle, at Industrial Bank or many of the large institutions. So I want to know, how can us, as part of, our alma maters or organizations we're part of, put that emphasis to allocate capital to you guys, because it trickles back. And I know you guys talk a lot about even our sisters, Black women. I know John Rogers, you had Melanie Hobson up. Jacqueline Bowles Dole is the reason I was able to connect with Industrial Bank. And then Don, with you guys, MWBE, you guys are advocates of that. So one, I just want to show what practical steps can we take if we work at corporations or have alma maters that have endowment funds to be like, look, you need a bank with Industrial Bank, or you need to be an LP investor with the People's Corporation, or you need to allocate funds to, mutual funds and investment funds. And how important was that for someone like you with Ariel Investments, John, with Howard University's assistance, and how did that play out? So we know,
Well, it was interesting, great opportunity. I said Howard was our first institutional account. They gave us $100,000 to manage back in 1983. So it was important because not only to have that $100,000, it paid about $1,000 a year in fees. So it wasn't going to, make us rich, but it got us to meet their endowment consultant, who ultimately took a shine to us and recommended us to several of their clients. And also, we had a real live track record that we started to build, because people don't want to hire you until you have a track record. Howard was willing to hire us before we had a track record. So it was greatly, greatly appreciated. The introduction helped. My mom was very helpful, but also who was very helpful was Dr. James Bowman, who was an early investor in Ariel, early board member, and he was on the board of Howard. And so he went out and helped make a presentation for us. And we went out there together to Washington and made the presentation to the board together. I think maybe he'd been a graduate also. And Dr. Bowman is actually Valerie Jarrett's father. So he just was instrumental early on of being a board member, introducing us to Howard and helping us get that early opportunity. The last thing I would say is it'd be great if we could get most of the other historically Black colleges to work with Black-owned money managers. I would guess that less than 10% of the endowment assets across the board are with Black firms. And similar to the United Negro College Fund has very few of their assets with Black-owned money management firms. So we have a work to do. And many of us serve on those boards, and we allow the economic opportunities too often to go to white men.
Don, do any of the HBCU endowment funds allocate? Have they ever partnered with you on a deal? I'm just kind of curious, or not, and what do we need to do to?
No, well, look, I think first of all, I want to take, I think John raises a very important point about Black institutions doing business with Black businesses that are super talented. So when I became treasurer, I got elected treasurer of the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation Board, which is the think tank and the foundation that funds all of the Congressional Black Caucus's activities, including the annual legislative conference. And so I became treasurer, and I got a report about where the tens of millions of dollars that we had was deposited. And it was deposited in one of the largest white banks in the United States. And I asked the team members and the committee members of the finance committee, why do we have our money there? And they said, well, because it's safe, et cetera. And I said, but we're the Congressional Black Caucus. And I mean, we should have all of our money in Black-owned banks. And I got pushback from staff and the committee members. The board had an investment committee, and I brought it. I mean, I had to bring it up at every board meeting, and then I got elected vice chair and then chair, and we moved all of our money. I said the members will embarrass them. If anyone ever found out that the Congressional Black Caucus's money was not in Black banks. And I heard, okay, well, the risk on the deposits, because Black banks don't have, they don't have a lot of financial resources for some reason, and the money's less safe. I said, well, the government insures it, and there's all kinds of ways to navigate that. So ultimately, because I kept bringing the issue up and made it an issue, all the money got put into Black-owned banks, as it should. And we focused on Black banks in districts where we had members of the caucus so that we could invest in the communities of the members and so forth. And I could not believe that the Black men and women who served on that board never raised that as an issue. And then there was an issue of, okay, and I said, we've got to take the money out now and move it now. And there was an issue, oh, we're going to get some early withdrawal penalties. I said, well, you should tell this bank why we're doing it and see if they'll waive it. And if not, I'll pay for it. But that's where we had to go to get it out of there. So I think it's very important when any of us get into positions where we have some influence or authority over fair deployment of capital, that we exercise it. Otherwise, what's the point of being there? Now, I know the only reason why I'm where I am today is because of the men and women who came before me, who did things like John Rogers' father did, and things like what Martin Luther King, Medgar Evers, Jesse Jackson, Marion Barry, and so forth, what they did to fight for us to have equal rights. And so I know that those are the opportunities that I'm benefiting from came because of their sacrifice. And in terms of my career, Marion Barry put me on the Property Tax Appeal Board of Washington, D.C. when I was 23 years old. He appointed me as chairman of the board at 24. I was a cabinet level, sub-cabinet level position in the government, one of the most influential boards in the city and the most powerful real estate board in the city at 24 years old. And then when I had the vision to build an office building in Southeast DC in Anacostia on Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard, it was a city government that he ran that pre-leased office space from us so that they could bring government services to the communities that they serve. And he pre-leased that building so that it made it financeable. And that was my first development deal. And without that, I wouldn't be where I am today, without those three breaks. And so the way I could never repay him and the people who came before me for the opportunity. So what I try to do as a business person is to run my business in the same spirit that compelled all of these people who came before us to fight for us, and to live by the spirit of what Marion Barry thought and fought for. And that is economic empowerment of our people. So as a company, we have a goal of at least 35% of all of our contracts, all of our business goes to minority-owned businesses. And we have historically had a prior goal of 25% and exceeded that, and are going to continue to build on that in every project that we do. And so the $4 billion of developments that we have active now, we are going to award well over $1 billion in contracts to minority businesses. And that's how I feel I can repay or begin. I could never repay the opportunities that I got. And so, but that is what drives me, is to support businesses. But I think it's critical. There's nothing worse than a Black person getting in a position of power and then not helping Black people. I mean, it is better to have nobody in power than to have somebody who takes advantage of all the hard work and of the people who came before them and get into a position and not go in there and level the playing field.
And Laurel, you know, what the theme that we're talking about here, we have to be very intentional about supporting Black businesses every day. You know, whether it means supporting a Black bank or Black owned mutual fund, or, you know, if you just think about travel, I mean, there are Black owned hotels all around the country. And, you know, when you have to go somewhere, you should be looking up NABHOOD and finding a Black owned hotel and stay there. And you know, a Black cleaners, Black restaurants, you know, all kinds of services and products. And we need to be intentional about it every day so that we can keep this wealth in our community and not spend over $1 trillion outside of our community every year.
And just to piggyback what you guys were touching on in regards to holding our people accountable when they're in position of power. So just thinking about the lens from economic empowerment from our state, local, politicians that happen to be Black. I know you guys mentioned Mayor Jackson, Marion Barry. It seems like this day and age, the mayors don't move the same way. And I want to know, what do we have to do, especially the younger generation, to make sure we apply that right pressure and hold them accountable so they can provide economic empowerment to you guys still, but then to the next generation as well? What do me and my constituents need to do? And why do you think that's changed with the Black politicians now, like in regards to not really flexing their power or not being as aggressive?
I think Don said it earlier. He said, the demographics of some of these cities has changed, and certainly in DC. And so politically, a mayor of a city like Washington, DC, it has to appeal to a broader audience. It's not just Black, but I think that's one of the things that the Greater Washington Black Chamber of Commerce we're doing is working with the mayor to really get behind the numbers and trying to develop ways to help her reach their goals.
Yeah, I'll tell you something. What your generation needs to do, I mean, let's just think about where we are right now. Joe Biden, who is a very nice man, was on his way to defeat. He had been beaten in the first couple of primaries. The savior of his campaign, and ultimately what will make him president of the United States, was Black people. Jim Clyburn and the Black voters of South Carolina threw him a life preserver. Without it, he'd be watching tonight's debate at home himself. And Black people delivered the Democratic nomination for him. In order for him to win, it will require Black turnout almost to the level of 2008 when Barack Obama was elected president. So we should expect things for our support. That is economic opportunity, transformative economic opportunity. He will not be burdened with some of the limitations that Barack Obama was burdened with, as being the first Black president and having to be president for everyone. This man owes his entire political existence to, if he becomes president, to Black voters. So he needs to deliver, and we need to expect him to deliver. We need to also understand what happened in the 1960s was confrontation. Confrontation and letting the sun shine in is what created the pathway to civil rights for us. And then in the 1970s, the election of Black voters, because Black people, we were denied the right to vote. So when we got it, we utilized it, and we elected Black elected officials. And your generation needs to vote, and not only for president, but for mayors and city council members who are going to fight for Black economic empowerment, and not be afraid to say, we're going to right this imbalance. We're going to be pro-Black business. We're going to be pro-Black entrepreneurship. I mean, no more emerging managers, no more, local small businesses or certified business industries. There should be nothing wrong with saying Black businesses, and your generation should expect it, because after all, the country got nearly a quarter. I mean, think about this. The country got 2.5 centuries of free labor from our people. And that's the pillars of this economy. And 100 years of extreme oppression and low wages to our people, and not being paid fairly, or the right to build wealth. They got to further advance this country. So if we need to exercise our vote, but we need more than them to be nice to us and polite to us. We need concrete economic opportunities. And by the way, if a politician's not willing to do that, then they don't deserve our support. And I think that's the expectation, has to be that they're going to get into office and do something with it. And there's a reason why we have had these declines economically, and this expansion of income and wealth disparity. And that is because most of our elected officials have sold us out. And we cannot accept that anymore, period.
Well, only thing I would add to this is we need to support and acknowledge and celebrate the leadership that's making a difference. I mentioned earlier, Maxine Waters, chairing the House Financial Services Committee, is extraordinary, fighting for Black businesses. Joyce Beatty, who chairs the subcommittee on diversity and inclusion, she's extraordinary. Congressman Cleaver and Congressman Kennedy just recently sent letters to the 20 largest endowments in the United States, putting pressure on them to work with Black-owned firms for the first time. And I think it's important. The only thing that's interesting is a lot of the people that responded to the congressman's letter, they claimed that they were working with Black businesses, even though a lot of the companies they were claiming were Black-owned just had a Black partner or a Black executive, and all of a sudden they redefined what it meant to be a Black business. So we start to make a little progress, and then the people who've kept us out forever decide to redefine the rules in ways to make them look better than reality. You know, only in America can that happen. But again, I'd like to congratulate Congressman Cleaver for his leadership, Congressman Kennedy, and again, Congressman Waters and Beatty are just extraordinary on these issues that we care so deeply about.
And just to follow up with you guys stated, Don, you mentioned the 200 years of, well, more than that of free.
46.
Yes. So I really wanted to illuminate, and who better to talk about than you three, Black Bank, real estate and land, and investment funds, especially your lineage with Tulsa, Oklahoma. How do you guys feel about reparations? Don, I know you were just on with Ice Cube not too long ago, and he's working for the contract of Black America, but what's your thoughts on reparations and like applying pressure, what should be discussed and things of that nature from all three of you guys? And John, I don't know if you can illuminate when all the bombings happened in Tulsa, Oklahoma, were we allowed to have insurance? Did your ancestors were allowed to have insurance for the losses that were attributed or not at all? And those losses?
We had insurance companies. I don't know if there was one there, but there, you know, Blacks owned every type of business essentially that there was. And John probably knows better than I do. Around the country, there were businesses, and it may even have been an insurance company, you know, in Tulsa.
I don't think that my understanding is they were not insured, so they lost everything, all the wealth that had been created in Tulsa at the time. And your question of reparations, I worked hard for a while working with Professor Charles Ogletree at Harvard. He had an initiative he called Before They Die to try to get reparation for the families in Tulsa. And they worked and worked and worked and worked and didn't quite get it done. We supported a documentary that Professor Ogletree was involved in too around this issue of reparations for the Tulsa descendants. One of the things I'd like to see is all these cities that were discriminatory to us and didn't allow us to fully participate, they should be at least now at minimum working with Black businesses and making sure the Black business leadership is in their hometowns. You know, there's not enough Black leadership or Black entrepreneurs in Tulsa. You know, that's a problem today, almost 100 years later. But then finally, I mean, it's a little bit of a bank shot, but if you look at like, you know, University of Alabama, where, you know, George Wallace stood in front of the school doors to stop Black people from coming. You look at some of those other Southern universities that didn't allow Black students. Even today, they don't work with Black businesses. And we just sort of let it happen. We don't point it out. We just allow all the economics to go to white men. And they've been keeping us out for generations after generations and still can't open the doors for us to fully participate in the economics of these large institutions.
Laurel, if we keep spending our money with white businesses, they have no reason to invest money back into our community. If we spend more money with our own businesses, the issues will take care of themselves. That $1 trillion that we're all sick of hearing because we spend 97% of it outside of our community. If we just took 25% and spend it very intentionally in our own community, we'll change our own environments and our own existence pretty quickly.
Yeah, I think reparations certainly is warranted. It's fair because we provided the nation with 246 years of free labor, and had we had those dollars and been able to utilize those dollars, we would have, and be paid for our work, we would be in a very different place. And so, yes, I think that there should be. I think the challenge from a political perspective is I don't see how the country can afford it. And they're certainly going to fight. I mean, there's going to be so much resistance for it, but I think that should be a demand, a continual one. But I think right now we're in a very unique time. I don't think that, I can't think of any time other than the 1960s where the agenda of our people has been at the forefront of the American discussion. And it is a combination of the pandemic and, of course, the death of George Floyd. The murdering of George Floyd awakened a sense of, frustration and engagement in the country. Most Americans were horrified by it, but it gave America the opportunity to hear and understand the extreme challenges and the systemic discrimination that Black Americans confront daily, and how the access to the American dream is elusive to most Black Americans. And I credit the young leaders of Black Lives Matter for continuing to push on this, because when I chaired the caucus during the 2016 election year, they were engaged and they were challenging our Black members of Congress, saying that they needed to do more for their constituents, for Black Americans, and how right they are. But they have been pushing on this issue, pushing on advancing our people forward. And I think people need to understand, my view of what Black Lives Matter means is it's not just Black Lives Matter and don't let the police murder us and give us equal protection under the law. It means that Black dreams matter, and Black aspirations matter, Black entrepreneurship matters, Black education matters. And we need to and if you look at what happened after the 1960s and going into the 70s, the effort began to knock down the affirmative action steps and efforts. The Al-Ambaki case against the University of California that the Supreme Court outlawed racial quotas in universities. It began, instead of Black businesses, it became minority businesses, and then it became minority and women-owned businesses. And at the end of the day, this country owes two groups of people an incredible debt: Black Americans and Native Americans. Everybody else has gotten the full benefit of this land of opportunity, and they owe the country, not vice versa. And so we need to get back to a place where it's time for the country to make amends, or to begin to try to make amends. And we cannot accept anything else. And the younger generation needs to make it crystal clear that these are their expectations, and these confrontations need to continue. There is no way JP Morgan Chase, and I like Jamie Dimon, and I'm a customer and a stockholder, and he's one of the most progressive bankers ever to walk the planet. And they were doing advancing Black pathways and some other initiatives well before George Floyd. And Melanie Hobson being on the board certainly helped advance that. And that's Ariel's CEO. But there's no way they would have committed $30 billion to help close the Black wealth gap if it wasn't for Black Lives Matter. And so we cannot let up, and we can't, kind of go back to what things were normally. And we can't let the outcome of this presidential election, whether Biden wins or loses, kind of have us disengage. We got to put the foot, on the gas even more and be engaged in these state and local and municipal races the next time around. But we can't let up.
I know you guys' time is valuable. I'm going to allow, if a little patient, about 3 questions from the attendees, but I do want to let Renee Mims speak on behalf of Women's Lawyer Division in Washington, D.C. as a partner organization. Then let about 3 other questions roll in if you gentlemen can bear that. Renee, it's your moment real fast. I wanted you to represent GWAC, Women's Lawyer Division. A minute. You're on mute.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you first to the Catalyst Network for extending an opportunity to partner on yet another phenomenal program. Thank you to our distinguished panelists for your wealth of wisdom, your transparency, and your tangible action steps. I proudly serve as the president-elect of the Greater Washington Area Chapter, Women Lawyers Division of the National Bar Association, or GWAC for short, which is a network of African-American women attorneys dedicated to the professional development of its members and improving the quality of life for the greater DC community. And in that vein, we will be hosting a voter registration march, John Lewis Good Trouble Voter Awareness March on next Tuesday, October 27th, starting at Congress Heights Metro Station and going to the Entertainment and Sports Arena. That we will be starting at 7 a.m. for anyone who would like to participate. And if you'd like to learn more about our organization, feel free to visit our website at gwacbar.org, that's GWAC, or feel free to follow us on social media at GWACbar. Thank you again for the opportunity, and thank you to our panelists. This was phenomenal.
So Matthew, I'm coming to you right now. If you could present your question to the attendees, to the panelists. You're live.
Sure. Thank you all for sharing your insights on the panel. So I'm an MBA student at Yale, studying finance. So my question to you guys is, we're in a position now where racial equity and economic inclusion have kind of finally being recognized by corporate America. That's something actually that needs to be done. So my question to you guys is, how do you actually get capital employed and reallocated into Black businesses, and also being able to keep the momentum that's momentum that's going right now? Because, for example, like companies already have their capital tied up, they already have their contract set up. How do we then essentially get them to reallocate that capital into Black businesses, into some of these economic zones where people essentially need it the most?
Well, capital is not the easiest thing to find for small Black businesses. A lot of businesses get started with money from friends and families and credit cards and mortgaging real estate. And if there's young people out there, one of the first things to do on your building wealth list is to buy a home. You may need it, if you start a business. There are funds out there, but you've got to look for them. SBA has small business investment companies that do loans and investments for small, high potential businesses, and they get a debenture which allows them to leverage money, for the money that they've raised. But make sure you have a solid and tight business plan, and you can make a pitch and be very intentional about what you're doing, because when you run across someone or you have an opportunity to make a presentation, you've got to have all your plans and your ducks in a row, including management, marketing, and all the basic things that a business plan should have. John might be able to add much more to that.
John, you're on mute.
Sorry. I was just going to say quickly that Yale has 2 of the top African-American academic leaders in the country. Dean Kerwin Charles is an extraordinary economist who's done wonderful work on the Black wealth gap in this country and the income gap in the country. And then Heather Tooks is an economist in the business school there who serves on the board of Ariel Investments. And so I've been very impressed with her leadership. So I would just say that Yale is just doing a great job, and it's great that you're there at the Yale Business School.
Laurel, you're on mute. You're on mute, Laurel.
He was having trouble with his.
Yeah, okay. I appreciate calling that out. I guess, Matt, I was trying to mute you. I didn't know if you had another question or.
My question was maybe just to clarify a little bit in terms of more on the corporate side, right? Because if you think about it, a lot of the PE companies, for example, they still own a lot of money. Corporations still own, a large percentage of wealth. How do we then essentially get them to take that wealth and put it into Black businesses and put it into, Black communities? Because right now, they have things they're invested in. How do we get them to essentially change and kind of see the value of investing in Black businesses and investing in Black communities?
I think there's, 3 quick answers, because I know we only have time for 2 other questions. I'll try to be really brief. One, we have to support our civil rights leaders. When Reverend Sharpton, Reverend Jackson, Mark Morial, and others go in and fight for us and push these companies to do the right thing, for generations, they've been able to get some companies to work with Black businesses, hire more Black executives, support more African-American business leaders in general. So civil rights leadership's critical. The second, I've talked a couple times already today about supporting progressive political candidates that are going to go out and fight for Black businesses, because they control the anchor institutions and the corporations in their communities, and that's critically important. And then finally, those of us who are fortunate to be in leadership roles, to be on the boards of directors, we have a responsibility to speak up and speak out and fight for Black businesses and Black business leaders in everything the corporation does. And we've not done that. We've allowed these corporations to do supplier diversity, which means giving us a chance for the janitorial contracts and the construction contracts, which are important. But we want to be able to be involved in the parts of the economy where the wealth's created today: financial services, professional services, technology. You mentioned private equity, the hedge funds, venture capital, all those areas we are locked out of. And we sit on the boards of the institutions that hire those firms and don't insist on economic equity for all of us and economic opportunity for all of us. So when we're in these leadership roles, we have to fight for Black business, and we can make a difference. When you're in the boardroom, people have to respond, but they'll only respond if we speak up.
I think I would add there that one, more African Americans ought to get into private equity and hedge fund business. We're getting into the private equity space because we see a void in the marketplace in terms of deploying capital to Black real estate developers and real estate investors. We see that as an underserved market. And so we're going to be going in and doing business and proving that there's a business model to deploy capital with Black entrepreneurs in communities of color. And I think that there needs to be, we got to take more entrepreneurial risk. I think one of the things that I've noticed, in fact, my son is 26, so his generation and people a little bit older than him, they're risk averse. Be back in the post civil rights. Very few people had anything to risk, so we became we were entrepreneurs. And the reason why, when Doyle mentions there were Black insurance companies and Black banks and basically Black organizations and businesses in every area, because the white firms wouldn't do business with us. And so we created our own economy. Desegregation allowed white firms to do business with us and give nothing back and not be reciprocal. And they could take our money, but not be reciprocal. But what's happened is there's a risk-averse generation now. A well-educated African-American person who is going to get a decent job in corporate America. But it's going to be rare that they're going to ever work their way up and get to run the company. And I think that what many Black high-level executives are seeing is that how few Black CEOs there are in Fortune 500 companies, and how that disparity's there. And so I think that we need more smart, creative, talented Black professionals to become entrepreneurs, to leave the Goldman Sachs of the world, to leave the JP Morgan and start their own private equity fund and hedge fund. That's how the white guys have done it. So we need to be willing to take a greater risk. And then they can come to people like John, Doyle, me, and others as investors to invest in their platform. I mean, it's not by accident that the richest Black person in this country did it, running his own investment management business, Robert Smith. And so it is not by accident that two of the three gentlemen talking right now, who are all very wealthy and successful, did it running their own financial services businesses. So being an entrepreneur, great wealth generally comes to those who are going to take some risk and are entrepreneurs. And so that's one way that you can get more money into the Black community, is by having more Black people managing money and being entrepreneurs.
Thank you all.
You're welcome.
And Sean, I'm gonna pass it to you for the second to last question. Hold on for one moment. Let me just. Hold on for one moment. Hello, Sean. Sean, you're on. Yes.
You guys hear me?
Yeah.
Hi.
Okay. All right. Well, I just want to first thank you guys for coming to speak to me, speak to everyone, because you guys are really dropping some like very valuable information, especially for me in my career, because I'm 19 years old and I'm also a sophomore at FAMU. And Mr. Rogers, actually had the pleasure of meeting you actually last year at the Boule event with my dad when I was there as well. And so it's good to see you again. And Mr. Peebles, I actually had a question for you and all the other panelists. I'm 19 years old and I actually want to get started in real estate because I'm very interested in entrepreneurship. So what I was going to ask you is, for somebody my age, what would you recommend? What would you recommend that I do to get started in like how to be successful in real estate?
I mean, getting educated in the business, and I don't mean necessarily a degree in real estate, but educating yourself about the business and the fundamentals. I was going to be a doctor. I went to college to go and become a doctor. And after my first year, I decided I did not want to go into medicine. I changed my mind. So I quit and I went back to Washington, D.C. and got a real estate sales license. And I made a commitment to myself that I would be a multimillionaire before I would have graduated from medical school, just so I could prove my parents wrong because they thought I made a mistake. But I took real estate classes at American University and University of Maryland. And I started as a sales agent and I learned the business and I began to gain more knowledge. And then I became an appraiser. And then by 26, I was building my first office building. And so what I would recommend is to begin to educate yourself about the area of the business, and also what area in real estate do you want to be in? Real estate developer. If you want to be a real estate developer, then learn, but then also give it a try. I mean, real estate development is a low barrier to entry business. I mean, really think about it. I'm a college dropout, and I've been able to have some pretty decent success in the business. The tallest residential building in New York City that just got finished was developed by a guy who about maybe 12 years ago was selling wigs out of his living room to Orthodox Jewish people. And he sold that business to a company in Chicago and I think he cleared like $13-14 million and started investing in real estate. A guy who just bought a $1 billion building in Manhattan. 20 years ago, he came to the country from Israel and was a taxi cab dispatcher. Steve Ross, who runs a company called Related, which is the largest private real estate development firm in the country. And he started off as a real estate lawyer, or an affordable housing lawyer, and then started developing affordable housing. So there's so many different pathways into real estate development. And so you can self-teach yourself, and building a house is the same exercise as building a big building. It's just, more people, bigger numbers, more zeros, and and a little more time. And so going through and learning the fundamentals and getting into the mix of things. I mean, there's work for developers. I mean, several of the development executives that have worked for me are now developers on their own doing, pretty decent sized projects. And so it's getting that in that mix and getting the experience and getting it very early and being a student of the business. That's how I would recommend getting into the development business.
Okay, thank you. And is it okay if I ask another question for all the panelists? Okay.
I think
Sorry.
I think whoever best, everybody has different skill sets, so we don't all three have to answer everyone.
Agree.
Oh no, I was this next question was just a question out of curiosity. Since you guys are very successful, is there anything that you wish you would have learned when you were younger that would have benefited you significantly in your career?
Well, for me, I would just say we should have diversified earlier. We're very focused at Ariel, just primarily here in Chicago for a long time, just on small and mid-cap value investing, common stocks. Then we got into international and global investing 9 years ago, and Melody Hobson's leading us into some new areas this year and next year. So that's my biggest lesson, is that we should have diversified earlier and maybe made some acquisitions of peers that could have helped us grow faster.
I would say, actually, when I came out of college, I became a big fan of mutual funds, to tell you the truth. And I was a certified financial planner, but my father died, and so I never really got to pursue that business. But I wish the bank had moved into other financial services sooner, because banking is obviously a competitive environment, and I think we need to broaden and diversify a little bit more. And I wish I could have been able to carry financial planning and built that as a business within the bank, because when I was studying for it and I was going to the classes, my first exam, there was 300 people in the room, 2 Blacks. And I learned some things about, financial planning and money that I didn't even know. And I'm a bank president's son. And so I realized that if I didn't know those things, how many other Blacks don't know those things? So I wish I had done that sooner.
Thank you.
Institutionalize our capital. I mean, I would have done that had I known. If I could rewind 20 years ago, I would have institutionalized the capital of our company. We grew our business from retained earnings almost entirely, and I would have institutionalized that a lot earlier.
All right, thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it. You guys have a good one.
Thank you.
So gentlemen, I think that's it. I don't know if you guys have any closing remarks, but feel free to, if you have any closing remarks before we adjourn. But I want to express my appreciation first and foremost. You guys basically cannibalized 2.5 hours of your all's time. I know you guys have a demanding schedule, so I want to express my appreciation. And if you guys want to say anything before closing out, more than welcome to, or we can just adjourn.
Well, at the risk of sounding like a broken record, I think all of us as consumers need to find where we can spend at least 25% of our money with Black-owned businesses. A book that Maggie Anderson wrote, and a study done by Kellogg Business School, said if we just go from 3 to 10%, we would employ 1 million Black people overnight. So we just need to keep that money home. And thank you, Laurel. This has been a wonderful evening.
Definitely.
And I would just, on my desk here in my office, I have this article from the New York Times Magazine called What is Owed by Nicole Hannah Jones, rather, who wrote the 1619 Project. it's an extraordinary magazine article talking about the challenges we faced in our community since we came here as slaves, and how the society has not allowed us to fully participate in our capitalist democracy, and some ideas of what has to happen. So I just would close on saying that that article has been very inspiring to me. And again, reminds us that we have to fight together to create equal economic opportunity for all of us.
John, let me just interject real quickly. One lady, her son is actually trying to go on your path. So I just wonder if she could present this question to you briefly right before we adjourn. I apologize about this. I just wanted to give it a platform to present this question. Charlie, you're on, so you can present your question to Mr. Rogers before they all adjourn. I'm just trying to give you this last minute platform. Hello, I guess.
Hello.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Sorry, we're coming in so late. Yeah, John, Mr. John Rogers. Yeah, my son wants to essentially follow your pathway. He's a very avid value investor. I'm, on the other hand, I'm a growth investor, and he wants to quit his corporate job and start his own value fund, starting with raising money from the family and friends, I guess just like you did. My advice to him is to wait and learn the corporate world a little bit more. He's been working for 3 years now. What do you think? Am I advising him the right way, or I should just let him jump into the ocean and learn?
Well, that's the same advice that my father gave me when I was 24 years old and left William Blair to start Ariel Investments. So I guess I would tell your son the same thing that I told my dad.
He's here.
Yeah, it's just, I think it's always good to start early. I think a lot of good opportunities have come because I started when I was 24. And if you feel ready and you feel confident and you've got friends and family that can help you, I'd go for it. That's what I did. And we were fortunate to be the first African-American money management firm in the country because we started when I was young. If I waited 6 months, Eddie Brown would have beat me to it.
Okay.
And he's a great friend and a great investor. So, yeah. So I think you go for it. And I know we're out of time. So just feel free to reach out and call me. And, I tell people all the time, my phone number's in the phone book, John Rogers on Delaware Street in Chicago. And just don't call early in the morning.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. And
Yeah.
I bug my dad about it every day, and I have plans of starting my company very soon. So thank you so much. You guys are all an inspiration.
Good luck.
Thank you. Thank you. Keep up the good work.
Don and John, Don, did you want to say last minute remarks before closing out, or?
No, just that it's been a pleasure spending the evening with two distinguished entrepreneurs, and thank you for your leadership and what you're doing. I mean, it's transformative, and glad to be a part of it.
Definitely.
Okay. Well, good night.
Yes. Good night. Good night to everyone.
Thank you.